Congressman, thank you for joining us this morning. Why is former President Trump questioning the vice president's racial identity?
You're watching the very beginning of the interview. George Stephanopoulos is asking Byron Donalds, why is Trump Orange Man bad? Questioning the race of Kamala the cosplaying chameleon. He's not asking this question to Trump. He's got Byron on, who's obviously interested in getting his talking points out about the migrant crisis, the economy, other important issues. But you're about to see how George Stephanopoulos and ABC, they don't want to talk about that. Instead, they're trying to bait Byron into a debate and an argument about Kamala Harris. Take a look again. Very first question.
Thank you for joining us this morning. Why is former President Trump questioning the vice president's racial identity?
Well, first, George, in Chicago, he was responding to a question from, I believe, Rachel Scott. Like, this is really a phony controversy. I don't really care. Most people don't.
See here, Byron is very level-headed. He said, well, all of this started when Rachel Scott, a colleague of George, posed a question to Trump. Did he think Kamala Harris got the position because she was a black woman? They took that soundbite, which propelled the Kamala not black discussion that we was already having over here. So that was Rachel at the NABJ, but here's George trying to have a race debate with Byron, who clearly just said it was something he believed people are less concerned about. They rather talk about more important issues, you know, like the migrant crisis, inflation, more pressing issues. Byron went on to answer that question anyway. Why? Because that was the question George just posed to him.
But if we're going to be accurate, when Kamala Harris went into the United States Senate, it was AP that said she was the first Indian American United States Senator. It was actually played up a lot when she came into the Senate. Now she's running nationally. Obviously, the campaign has shifted. They're talking much more about her father's heritage and her black identity. It doesn't really matter. The president mentioned it. What he also talks about far more frequently is the fact that Kamala Harris is the person who created this massive inflation, which is destroying black families, white families, Hispanic families. It's her failure as border czar that has left our southern border wide open, more than 10 million illegal immigrants coming into our country, record fentanyl coming into our country, which has killed more Americans than at any other point in the history of our country with respect specifically to fentanyl. And the fact that she and Joe Biden have unleashed one of the worst foreign policies in the history of our country that has us on the verge of World War III. That is Kamala Harris's record. President Trump talks about that frequently, but yes, he did mention it in Chicago in response to a question from Rachel Scott.
That was actually a good response. Byron was level-headed. He didn't fly off the rails. He answered the question about Kamala's race that George opened with. He said it was the Associated Press that promoted Kamala as the first Indian American back in 2016. So he went on to speak on the Biden-Harris record, trying to move the conversation away from if Kamala is black or not.
And you just repeated the slur again. If it doesn't matter, why do you all keep questioning her identity? She's always identified as a black woman. She is biracial.
No, George, he didn't bring the question up. You did. This is an interview that played live. You heard his first question, and then immediately his response to Byron is, look, you just repeated the slur again. Why do you all keep doing that? Now, wait a minute. Since when did saying somebody ran as an Indian woman before become a slur? How is stating that a slur? And then George hopped into the same defense that Kamala's team is passing around for all the media talking heads to repeat. They're saying she's biracial. Like, yeah, stop playing with us. George, you're disrespecting black Americans doing that, by the way, while you're trying to defend the chameleon who's also disrespecting black people, cosplaying as a black woman. Being biracial doesn't mean you're mixed with black. It means you're two different races. And then multiracial usually means you're mixed with more than two. When they say she's biracial, they want us to automatically assume that she's mixed with black. And again, George is about to repeat to millions that Jamaica, a country, is somehow a race.
And you just repeated the slur again. If it doesn't matter, why do you all keep questioning her identity? She's always identified as a black woman. She is biracial. She has a Jamaican father and an Indian mother. She's always identified as both. Why are you questioning that?
The lie detector determined that was a lie.
Well, George, first of all, this is something that's actually a conversation throughout social media right now. There were a lot of people who are trying to figure this out. But again, that's a side issue, not the main issue. The main issue...
See, Byron just said that's a conversation people are having on social media. That's a true statement. But he said that's a side issue, not the main issue. Then Byron tried to go back to what he believed the main issue should be, and that was the economy, inflation, the migrant crisis. But look at how George responded, clearly trying to bait this man into an argument. He's trying to make him blow up so they can paint this picture of an angry, crazy black man and discredit him. Look again. Instead, it backfired because Byron is being level-headed and it's George that's having a complete meltdown. I've never seen him like this.
Well, George, first of all, this is something that's actually a conversation throughout social media right now. There were a lot of people who are trying to figure this out. But again, that's a side issue, not the main issue. The main issue.
Sir, one second. You just did it. You just did it again.
Of the United States.
Why do you insist on questioning her racial identity?
You want me to talk?
You see, George cut him off in a very hostile manner, and he's like, "You just did it again." Come on, did what, George? All he said is that's a conversation on social media, and it is. He said that's a side issue and tried to change the subject. But here we go with George. He's now gaslighting him, trying to say that Byron is the one who shifted the conversation to Kamala's race, when it's really George directing the conversation to her race the whole time. You can obviously see it. Nothing is edited out right here. And when I saw this, it was crazy. I'm like, how is this happening on ABC? Obviously trying to steer Byron into an argument so they can paint the picture of a mean, angry black man against a black woman so they can run with the narrative that black men are going against black women. That's the story that George was desperately trying to create right now. All of this to defend Kamala's non-existent black heritage.
I want you to answer my question.
George, now that you're done yelling at me, let me answer. He talked about it on the stage yesterday in Atlanta for 2 minutes? He spent more than 35, 40 minutes going after her record, talking about how radical of a senator that she was. She was the most liberal senator in the United States, in the United States Senate. That is a fact. He talked about the job that she did as vice president of the United States, a job, I will add, which has been a failure for the American people. I know you guys like to glom on to this that he talks about in jest or in a serious manner for about a minute or so, but what you do not cover is the litany of failures of Kamala Harris. That's what you're not covering, George.
So questioning somebody's racial identity for a couple minutes is okay?
George, I'm going to tell you again, he brought it up. AP is the one that wrote the headline when she first came in to the United States Senate. Didn't talk about her being black, talked about her being the first Indian American senator. AP brought that up. I mean, George, we could have this conversation for the entire segment, but none of this matters to the American people. What matters to the American people is, are we going to have the same policies of the Biden-Harris administration that has been destructive of the American people, or are we going to have the policies of the Trump administration, which put America first, had low inflation, prosperous Americans, no matter your race, no matter your color, no matter your creed, and a foreign policy that kept America safe? Those are the facts that truly matter, because this issue is going to come and go. The lives of the American people is what's going to remain, and that's what matters more than anything else.
Byron once again directed the conversation to what he thought was more important. He said the issue is going to come and go, but the status of the economy and inflation is going to stay the same after this conversation over this cosplaying chameleon is over.
If it doesn't matter, I don't understand why you keep on repeating it, why the president keeps on repeating it, why those introducing the president yesterday
George,
keep on
actually,
repeating
I'm
it.
not the one who keeps repeating it. George, you're the one that's bringing it up now. That's you.
You've done it,
I understand why
sir.
you've done it.
You've done it 3 times. Every single answer you gave me. Now let me finish, sir.
George,
every single answer you gave, you repeated the slur.
Asked me, George. That's why I'm pushing back on you now. George, you asked me the question 3 times. I responded, but I'm.
And every single time you repeat the slur. That is exactly my point.
Yeah, George just told Byron he's the one bringing it up, when George is the one who presented this question 3 times, in a combative tone, by the way. And all 3 times, Byron answered his question briefly and tried to move the conversation into policy and record. Meanwhile, George is yelling and getting mad, telling Byron that he's repeating a slur. The slur I'm still trying to find, by the way.
If it doesn't matter, I don't understand why you keep on repeating it, why the president keeps on repeating it, why those introducing the president yesterday
George,
keep on
actually,
repeating
I'm
it.
not the one who keeps repeating it. George, you're the one that's bringing it up now. That's you.
You've done it,
I understand why
sir. You've done it. You've done it 3
George,
times. Every single answer you gave me. Now let me finish, sir.
George,
every single answer you gave, you repeated the slur.
You asked me, George. That's why I'm pushing back on you now. George, you asked me the question 3 times. I responded, but I'm.
And every single time you repeat the slur. That is exactly my point. You simply can't say that it's wrong.
George, so then what you're saying, and I want to get off this topic because it's not the only thing that's going on. But George, now you're saying that AP is the one that slurred Kamala Harris, because those are the facts. You can go to the internet and look at the clips, George, if you want to, or we can talk about this now. I prefer to talk about the future of our country because the American people are struggling. The American people do need serious policy decisions to be made, and they need serious leadership on the world stage. Kamala Harris has not proven that she can do that. Donald J. Trump has proven that he can do that.
AP did not say that Kamala Harris is not black. She is biracial. She is Indian. She is black. You continue to repeat the fact that you continue to repeat the slur. I don't understand why you and the president do it, but it's clear you're not going to say that it's wrong. And you've now established that.
George was sent out to defend Kamala against black Americans who can't be fooled into believing this Indian lady is a black American. He's calling it a slur and twisting up the whole article presented by the AP. Over here, I showed you that the AP promoted her as Indian American, and that was done for years. One, because that was the culture Kamala was raised in, and two, genetically, that's what she is. Indian mixed with more Indian and Irish. She only turned into Rachel Dolezal Jr. when she needed black support because most black people were Democrats. And if she wanted to win elections, especially on the national stage, she needed to claim black American status for our black American support.
For our audience. Trump also said at the convention that he would pardon January 6 rioters.
Everybody look for themselves. Let's move on.
I've already said that. Go ahead.
On the internet, everybody. Let's move on. There we go.
So, go on and repeat the slurs again.
George, please tell me this. So let's move on is a slur? That's all Byron said. People can go look for themselves. Let's move on. How is that a slur? This is why Americans don't trust old traditional media. George has tried to gaslight this guy over and over again, attempting to get a reaction out of him, all to defend Kamala the cosplaying chameleon from the truth that's been revealed. Let's go ahead and get the conversation started. Why was George trying to bait this man into an argument? What was the overall agenda? Let me know what you think below. Shout out to T. Gordon Williams, Tamara, and Dallas. I appreciate you ladies for supporting the channel. Don't forget that you can support this channel as well. Links to Cash App and PayPal are below. Ladies, fellas, want a balanced analysis, want the truth from a woman's perspective? Then you're going to want to subscribe to this channel and don't forget to like and share.